So now we go from our distillation, which we have put our distillate from our receiving flask in our separatory funnel to get our oil, our hydrosol. Also, I've gotten out of the heating flask the material that we extracted from. This is rosemary and the soup that it was in. So today we're gonna do fermentation. You got your fermentation tank or container that you have to have disinfected first. So use some sort of anti-mold or bleach spray. Spray it down, fill it up with pretty warm hot water, and let it sit for a couple minutes, disinfect everything, and then rinse it. You're gonna do the same thing with the lid and your fermentation log. So this is what we're gonna do. We got our sugar. That's how we're gonna feed the yeast and yeast, all right? So first, this has all been disinfected. We're gonna put this is our little soup and our rosemary that has been distilled already. Just get something to get this out. And the reason that you want to disinfect everything is because you're creating an environment in which bacteria can thrive. So they're going to grow and be happy, which means that you're creating an environment for all types of bacteria and fungi and molds to grow in as well. Now there's this thing that happens though as well. That thing that happens is that sometimes in your ferment you'll get a little bit of a white mold growing on the top. Disinfect something like this. You can open it up and just skim it off the top. It's not gonna ruin your distillate, your fermentation or anything like that, but it can happen. So I've had this separated for a while. I'm gonna use a little more of the water that I've gotten. And this is all rosemary, okay? I'm gonna use the same water just to rinse this off a bit. You can use distilled water, regular water, doesn't actually matter. Although technically, distilled water would be a little more free from possible microbes than tap water, but we're not making beer, we're making ethanol. So what I like to do is provide my ferment with at least 3 inches of room from the surface of the ferment up here. So this is about like 3-4 inches. The reason is because there's going to be gas exchanges going on and you want this to be able to breathe, because sometimes things are going to rise, it may bubble, it may fizzle, it may foam, and you don't want that stuff coming out through here because it could just cause contamination. Sometimes bugs just show up, fruit flies, gnats will just show up out of nowhere and want to eat the delicious stuff that's going on in here. So give yourself a good amount of room, about 4 inches, not too much either. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add the yeast. I'm going to do 2 teaspoons, not tablespoons, 2 teaspoons. You don't need a lot. They're very small, they're microscopic, right? The fact that we can see them tells you there's a lot in there. And then I'm gonna use, this is a gallon, so I'm gonna use a cup of sugar. And sometimes, so I'm gonna use a whole cup in there. Some people use a little less. I find that because this yeast is not consuming, potatoes or rice, starchy things that allow them to grow, we're creating ethanol to pull ethanol or the spirit from the plant matter. So the yeast isn't particularly, fond of pulling alcohol or devouring something that is an herb, for example. And the herbs, they contain essential oils that are antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral. So giving them a little sugar, I enjoy doing it. Some people actually prefer to just use the regular yeast that may be found on the plant, but I find when you're distilling the plant material, you're killing yeast anyway, right? So I'd rather not give my time to the possibility that I go ahead and ferment and all I have growing is a bunch of other shit that I don't want. I want alcohol, that's it. So now that we have our cup of sugar, our 2 teaspoons of yeast mixed in here with my ferments, the juice that was in the heating flask, and hydrosol from the same distillation. I'm gonna seal it up nice and tight. I'm gonna disinfect this really quick before I put it in there. There we go. Not too deep, not too loose. Oop. And this is a fermentation log. So this prevents the yeast from breathing when this is filled with a fluid, from breathing in, which you want to happen because that's how they're gonna keep producing what they do. It's also gonna keep things from going in, like bugs, for example. So I used to just put ethanol in here, but I found that the ethanol would evaporate very quickly and in a day or two, because this is gonna go on a heating pad and this is gonna get warm, it will just evaporate, leaving my ferment vulnerable to contamination. So I use rubbing alcohol. This is just ethyl rubbing alcohol, the stuff that you use when you get a cut. So it's 70% ethanol, the rest of it is water, which is great because the water stabilizes the ethanol and keeps it more readily available there rather than evaporating quickly. But keep an eye on this as you do your fermentation because it's going to evaporate eventually. See, as I'm shaking it, I'm getting the bacteria, the yeast. So you see that there's different gas changes going on, right? So the air will be coming out when they're eating. You'll see gases come out, but sometimes you'll see gases kind of go in. So don't pass this line. It says right here, max. Don't go beyond that line. It's actually even, but right now the yeast, something's going on between the heat, temperature changes. Anyway, so this is it. Now, depending on the yeast that you use, depending on the plant material that you're also fermenting, I find that in about 2 to 3 weeks, this could be done, but I give it a month. And what I do is, I pay attention to the plant matter itself. It's in the bottom right now. And more times than not, what's gonna happen is, maybe later tonight, tomorrow, as I put it on the heating pad, all this is gonna rise. And as the yeast continue to eat the materials from the sugar and the plant that they like, you'll see slowly that the plant material goes to the bottom. When I see that all the plant material is at the bottom, I consider my fermentation done. This is gonna be about a month. So take your time, keep observing it, keep it on a heating pad, and I'll show you an example right over here. This is a plant heating pad. So this is my fermentation station. But this is where I got all the things right now that are fermenting at about 80 Fahrenheit. Don't forget that, 80 Fahrenheit. I don't try to go too much above that. So between 70 and 80 Fahrenheit, I can't remember the conversion right now. That's the sweet spot, and everything's gonna ferment. It's gonna be great. Give it about 3 weeks to a month, and you'll have alcohol. We'll do another video where when this is ready, we're gonna then take this and put it into distillation in a distillation train to extract the ethanol, the spirit, the alcohol out from all this water. It's not gonna be 100%, it's not gonna be a lot, but it'll be something. And this is one of my favorite parts in the plant alchemy process, but it's also the one that takes the longest, so it's cool. In the meantime, read, read, read. Study and read, study and read. So before I forget, and not just with fermentation, with every single thing that you do in the lab, you always want to label and date everything that you do. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I almost forget, but I don't. So this is rosemary. And I use the symbol for Cancer, which is fermentation. Today's date is 11/16/21. And that's it. Label everything so you know what the fuck you are doing. Because you may think you'll remember, but in a month from now, you may have 5 fermentation jars and have no fucking idea what was what. And that's it.